as I put a cookie in my mouth.
To throw my voice.
Good afternoon. My name is Chris Leak. I'm chair of the City County Planning Board. I would like to call the meeting to order and welcome everyone to the February 8th, 2024 meeting of the City County Planning Board. Would you please stand and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Today's meeting is being broadcast live on TV 13 and will be rebroadcast at 10 a.m. Friday morning and again at 4 p.m. Sunday afternoon. I'd like to recognize Councilmember Scipio for being with us today. And are there any other elected officials missing? Okay. Our first order of business today will be the consent agenda. These are items for which the petitioner is requesting withdrawal or continuance, or items for which staff has recommended approval and no one has signed up to speak in opposition. For public hearings today, each side will have a total of 12 minutes. There will be no rebuttal period. Once the public hearing is closed and the board goes into work session, no one is permitted to speak unless a planning board member asks them a question. For general use district zoning requests, the planning board must consider the full range of uses allowed in the zoning district being requested. The petitioner may not refer to a specific use for the property. For special use district zoning requests, however, the petitioner must identify the intended use or uses of the site and give specific details on how the site will be developed. Items under section B of the agenda will require final action by the appropriate elected body, either the city county council or the county commissioners. As such, votes taken today by the planning board concerning these items are recommendations that will be considered by the elected bodies during their review of the request. Before addressing the planning board today, we will need your name, address, and zip code for the record. Our first item of business is the approval of the minutes of the January 11th and 25th meeting. Is there a motion?
Move approval.
Motion by Mr. Lamb, second by Mr. Grubbs. Any discussion? All those in favor, sign of aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, the same sign. That is unanimous. I'm now going to call on Mr. Mark Allred to review the consent agenda for today.
Yeah, so the first item up is item B3. This is F1634. They requested a withdrawal of eight days or more prior to the planning board meeting, so it is automatically withdrawn. This is item C1. They also request a continuance that was received more than 8 days prior to today's meeting. It will be continued to March 14th at our next planning board meeting. And then we have our first one to discuss is item B1, case number W3607. The applicant is ONSCWS LLC, also known as Firestone Auto Care Center. This is a highway business special use, the highway business special use. The applicant is requesting the use motor vehicle repair and maintenance to the allowed uses. This is a 1.18 acre site on the west side of University Parkway between Carfair Drive and Harmony Street. As you can see on the site, that to the northwest is apartments, to the north and the south, kind of surrounding the other areas, are highway business. From the aerial, shows a property with a single-family residential house and woods to the west. This site has now been cleared and graded. Also, this site here has been cleared and graded, and this one. So this site here is currently being built to have a new car wash. And this one is being built to have a repair and maintenance facility also. Everything else you can see around it is developed. And this is the area plan map. Since the site was rezoned in 2021 to highway business, the entire parcel is now recommended for commercial. Here is the site plan. This is a 6,300 square foot motor vehicle repair and maintenance building with parking to the north and to the east. There's also internal crosswalk and sidewalk connection to existing sidewalks along University Parkway. There is 20-foot type 3 buffer yards to the west and the north, and the developer is proposing additional evergreen screening between the parking area and the apartment property. There is shared access along the southern property for ingress. And for egress, it's a right turn only because this median will be built as part of a TIP project for this area. Here is the proposed elevations that came forward. The request is consistent with the recommendations of the North Suburban Area Plan Update and Legacy 2030, as well as the request will provide additional commercial development in a growing area. For these reasons, the request does meet the requirements of the UDO, and staff recommends approval.
Any questions for staff? All right, no one has signed up. Is anyone here opposed to this recommendation? All right, so we're going to have to take this one off the consent agenda.
All right. Next case is B2. This is W3608. This is applicant Kelvin Gwynn. This is RS9 to RSQ limited use. This is 0.28 acres at the northeast intersection of South Martin Luther King Jr. Drive and Allen Street. The site is surrounded by RS9 with a RM5S to the west. I can find my pointer here. Sorry about that. The uses allowed in this RM5S is single-family residential and duplex. The only use being requested by the applicant is residential building, single-family. The aerial shows this as a vacant lot with a driveway that's at the western portion of the property. If approved, the parcel is large enough to accommodate 2 single-family homes. The area plan has this as the Southeast Winston-Salem Area Plan Update recommends single-family residential for 0 to 8 dwelling units per acre. This request meets the area plan recommendation, allows for an existing residential site in GMA2 to provide additional housing opportunities. For these reasons, staff recommends approval.
Any questions for staff?
Just one as a point of clarification, is the proposed use for 1 or 2 single-family detached homes?
If approved, it would allow for 2 single-family homes. There's no site plan, so I can't guarantee one or the other.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right, no one has signed up. Is anyone here opposed to this recommendation? Seeing no one, I declare the public hearing closed. What is the recommendation of the board?
Mr. Chairman, I move the planning board find that the request is consistent with the comprehensive plan.
Motion by Mr. Lamb.
Second.
Second by Mr. Grubbs. Any discussion? All those in favor, sign of aye.
Aye.
I oppose the same sign. That is unanimous.
Mr. Chairman, I further move the planning board recommend approval of W3608.
Motion by Mr. Lamb.
Second.
Second by Mr. Grubbs. Any discussion? All those in favor, sign of aye.
Aye.
I oppose the same sign. That is unanimous.
All right. So case B5 does have opposition and is taken off consent.
B5.
What about B4?
B4 as well.
B4.
About B4.
B4, because the staff recommended denial, is off consent automatically.
Okay.
Next case to discuss is C2. This is PBR 2024-02. The applicant is Winston-Salem Forsyth County Schools, and this is for the Brunson Elementary School. This is a public school in E zoning district. That's 10.44 acres on the east side of North Patterson Avenue between East Northwest Boulevard and East 11th Street. This site is located in GMA2 with commercial to the north and industrial to the east, south, and the west. This site plan has Brunson Elementary School has a 50,440 square foot, 3-story building located in the north central part of the property with 3 access points, 1 off North Patterson Avenue and 2 off Ivy Avenue. Parking is located in the south portion here and southeast of the building. Internal sidewalks will connect to existing sidewalks along East Patterson and Ivy Avenue. There is also a fire lane that's connecting to the internal basketball court to be able to get fire coverage to the northwest part of the building. And here is a future location for a pod if it is needed. Okay. Here are the elevations. This elevations was approved by the Community Appearance Commission and its technical advisory and project review. Site plan does meet UDO requirements and staff recommends approval.
Mr. Chairman, I move the planning board approve PBR 2024-02.
Motion by Mr. Lamb.
Second.
Second by Mr. Grubbs. All in favor, sign of aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same sign. That is unanimous.
Okay, and the last case on consent is C3, PBR 2024-03. The applicant is Atlasphere LLC, also known as Glen Abbey West. This is a 64-lot PRD and RS9 zoning. It's a 23.88 acres on the north side of Pisgah Church Road, west of Grays Farm Road. The RS9 zoning is located in GMA4 and surrounded by other RS9 zoning on the east, west, and the south. There is RS20 on the north side here of this creek, Martin Monroe Creek. This is a 64-lot PRD that will connect to an approved PRD that was approved by the Planning Board on June the 9th, 2022, named Glen Abbey. So again, Glen Abbey West and Glen Abbey. The PRD has 6 access points, 2 active open spaces, and 1 stormwater device here on the northwest side. It also has 20-foot type 1 buffer yards to the west and south, and site plan does meet UDA requirements. You may see on your staff, if it says 63 lots, it's because this street here got put in through, and when they did this, they were able to get another lot put in. So that's the reason why it's 64. And so staff does recommend approval.
Mr. Chairman, I move the planning board approve PBR 2024-03.
Motion by Mr. Lamb.
Second.
Second by Mr. Grubbs. Any discussion? All those in favor, sign of aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same sign. That is unanimous.
Mr. Chairman, we'll now go back to case B1, and since we did have a presentation and we went through the presentation on the consent agenda, we will just we'll let you turn to the opposition, and we'll also let anyone who's here to leave. Not the opposition, but the proponent, I'm sorry.
Okay. We will have a public hearing now on case 3607. We all have proponents first, and that's going to be Luke Dickey. If you will state your name, address, and zip code for the record.
Let me get my presentation pulled up here first. Yes, I emailed it.
I'll grab it.
Yeah. Okay. While I was doing that, Luke Dickey, Stimmel Associates, 601 North Trade Street, Suite 200, Winston-Salem, 27101.
Dickey?
Well, I apologize, Luke. Is there any way you can pull this off without that? Or you want me to see if I can grab it for you?
Yeah, if you can at least pull up the site plan, that would be
Okay,
fine.
yeah. So you've got that and you've got that there.
Yep, excellent, thank you.
Okay. Sign, selection, current slide.
Very good, appreciate it, thank you.
Thank you.
Yep. So good evening, or afternoon. I just want to thank you for being here to listen to this case, Chairman and members of the board. This is, again, is a rezoning just to add the use of motor vehicle repair and maintenance. This site, again, as Mark had mentioned in the staff report, was approved back in October of 2021. That plan originally was just a kind of retail office with a end cap for a drive-through on the side. They had been marketing that for a while, and they did not have anybody that came forward for that type of use. So Firestone Auto Care showed an interest, and that's why we're bringing this project before you this evening. Along with that, of course, what the changes had to be done is we had to add that use and then modify the site plan as part of that. As you can see, as part of that modification of the site plan, the orientation is really kind of the same. It took the building that was originally fronting out onto University Parkway and just kind of rotated it 90 degrees with the bays then on the north side. Then the buffer yard had to be increased from a typical type 2 because we're in motor vehicle repair. So now it is a type 3 buffer yard. And then when we had our neighborhood meeting, the owners of the apartment complex that is basically to the north and directly to the west of this site came and asked for additional screening because the retaining wall is roughly 10 feet. So the plantings of that on the property line would be below the retaining wall. So basically they'd be screening the retaining wall. And so then the parking and the building on top of that would not be screened as well. So we agreed to do another supplemental row of evergreen shrubs within that would get up to around a 10-foot height. And then we're placing those in areas that it's not going to conflict with the geogrid of the existing retaining wall. So we do have a few gaps in the area, but we're trying our best as we can to accommodate the screening. Mostly on the north side of that parking lot, there is some, there's a apartment building that will definitely block. And then on the west side is where their pool is located. So there's no building over there. It's just kind of the pool on that west side. So overall, that is just kind of the request that we have before you. In regards to kind of traffic generation, this type of use is much less than what was proposed originally with the traffic with the drive-through restaurant on the end. So I believe it cuts it pretty well and significantly, almost in half from what would be proposed. NCDOT, of course, does have their improvement plans for University Parkway. That's reflected on this here. That is limiting kind of our working out with driveway permits with them in that direction. We did have a neighborhood meeting. 125 invites went out for that. We did have 6 of the neighbors attend that meeting. The concerns focused a lot on the traffic and stormwater. There's an existing stormwater issue currently on the site. It's been graded out. There was a sediment basin that was kind of put at the top of the retaining wall. I don't think it's been maintained when that was done. So it's been overflowing the wall and then on down to Sunburst Circle. So there's causing some issues. Obviously, when this gets redeveloped, we have to do a stormwater management system that'll be underground that handles water quality and quantity. So hopefully that will improve from that standpoint. The other issue that we talked about is, and this was in the original rezoning when we did this, is that basically all of our discharge comes out to Sunburst Circle because that's where everything flows. And so there's no change in where we are proposing that. But again, once these stormwater management devices get put in, hopefully that'll help with their situation. And then we also talked about if there's continued issues to work with Keith Huff and Stormwater Department to see if there's some other items that we can be addressed to address that. I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have any at this time.
Any questions for Mr. Dickey?
Can I speak?
I'm coming to you, sir.
All right. Thank you so much.
All right, as said, we do have opposition in the case. Opposition, you have 12 minutes, so if you would approach the podium and state your name, address, and zip code for the record, if both of you are going to speak.
Albert Fouts from 165 Sunburst Circle,
Your zip code, Albert?
27105.
Thank you.
We live directly behind the car wash and where they're wanting to put the Firestone. And currently, every time it rains, we're flooded out. It's already washed our whole foundation out around our house. The basement's even, the floor's even coming up in the basement now over it. The whole retaining wall is gushing water out of the retaining wall. So it's washing the parking lot out underneath. And this whole idea of the Firestone, how y'all gonna unload tires and stuff? The truck don't have enough room to get in there and turn around. And I have all the pictures of all the flooding and everything. So,
Would you like to submit those in to us to see?
yes.
All right.
Is there a way to pull up like where their house is and where the stormwater retention
Yeah.
system is going to be?
And we tried to contact Keith Huff or whatever his name is, and still haven't heard nothing. He said he hasn't even heard nothing about this, and this has been going on since 2012. But every time y'all tie a business in, it's tied to us, and it's getting worse.
To answer your second question first, is the stormwater device is here in the northwest portion of the property. And make sure I'm telling you right, Luke, the outage is coming out through here, correct? Correct, down Sunburst Circle. Okay, thank you.
And that's the low point of the site, right, Luke? That's what it looks like? Can't tell what the grades.
And
they go back, if you can go back to that where you just were. And they live to the property west of, yes, right there. I believe that's, correct me if I'm wrong.
Yes.
That's
And
okay.
all the water comes to us.
Just from when they put that system in, it'll get better. Just if that.
Yeah, but y'all ain't listening to me. The whole wall is, even the brick at the bottom of the foundation is pushed brick out of the foundation of the wall. And I mean, it's gushing out water. It's awful. Like every time it rains, it's like 2 to 3 inches deep coming down the road. And even from the back side of the wall too.
I'll make sure I understand. So it's the retaining wall, or it's a retaining wall you're talking about?
They basically built the Great Wall of Winston-Salem.
That's what we call it.
On the,
Ma'am, I'm sorry, if you could give us your name, address, and zip code for the record.
My name's Luann Fouts. I live at 165 Sunburst Circle, 27105.
Thank you, Ms. Fouts. What would you like to tell us as well?
I have no problem with the Firestone. I just have a problem with the stormwater issue because it started when they tied the businesses in across the street, the Sherwin-Williams, the O'Reillys. They tied it in, it come under the street. We started getting more water. Then when they built this car wash and stuff, that tied more stormwater. We've had erosion and everything coming down the street. We've been dealing with, what's his name? Evans?
David Evans.
David Evans.
Yeah.
The erosion director has been out.
He's
I-
done nothing.
Talked to Chad Aldridge. He said that he's come out. And I'm there all day because I'm caregiver for my husband. I've not seen anybody. I just want something done about the storm water because it's not getting better, it's getting worse. And the ditches, I mean, there's stormwater ditches and everything, but when I moved there 32 years ago, the stormwater ditch was like 4 to 5 feet deep. Now it might be, what, 6, 7 inches deep?
Yeah, at one spot, as soon as it rains, it's coming over the ditch. It's
Yeah.
very shallow.
And like I said, we just can't handle it.
And every time, all the mud from the car washes is piling up on us. They've already had to re-gravel our driveway once, and it's still full of mud again. The porch is everything.
Sunburst Circle.
My name is Jesse Tyree.
Yeah, sorry.
27105,
Jesse, if you'll also tell us your address as well.
70 Sunburst Circle.
All right.
Not just about the storm drain stuff, but about construction itself. These people block the road. We have no way to get home. We gotta go backwards to the bank, and they yelling at us not to come in. Like, how do we get home? They have no, they keep using our driveways to turn around. One time they totally destroyed their driveway. They had to come down and redo it. I have people backing in my driveway, ruined my ditch. I haven't fixed it. It's still cold. It's a culvert,
Yeah,
whatever. It's,
crushed culvert.
It runs over, and it's all going over there into their yard. It's just a big old hassle. It would be nice just to get away from that.
It'd be nice to just buy it up.
Yeah.
The whole street.
Y'all can have it all.
Yeah.
I mean, that would be fair. This ain't, I mean, it ain't right. I can't even get home after working all day. It's very frustrating.
And then the right-hand turn situation, I don't even see how, that's gonna create more accidents right there.
Yeah, 'cause
It's
how's
already
the-
enough.
How's the 18-wheeler gonna turn, that sharp turn to get in through that car wash entrance to get back to Firestone?
Excuse me, can y'all tell us your street numbers again? Because we now have the map to look at and it'll help us.
He's
One's-
170, we're 165.
Okay, thank you. That helps a bunch. Yep.
The wall you're referring to is at the new car wash.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it was recently put in, because, is it open yet? It's not actually
No.
open
It
yet.
hasn't even been open.
Hasn't
They took
been
the
open.
signs back down.
Yeah, they repoed the signs off.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we don't know what they're gonna do with the car wash. But when they put that car wash wall up, I know rebarb's supposed to go in that wall before they put the concrete brick up or whatever. They did nothing like that.
It was just laying the block.
All they did was come in there, they graded in a bunch of dirt, and they didn't even give it time to really settle before they started constructing the wall. And then when it rains, you can see, I mean, they've got pipes running out of the wall for, excess water runoff, but it's bubbling at the bottom of
It's
the wall.
not even coming out of the pipes out of the wall.
It's
just
bubbling at
coming
the
out
bottom.
between the cracks and it's shoving out.
We're just afraid that it's just going to eventually
Gonna
just
fall.
collapse and
This parking lot's gonna wash.
Mr. Murphy, thoughts on this?
Well, Mr. Chairman, you've got a couple different things going on here. First of all, you've got operationally how they are, how they're blocking the street and those kind of things, and that's not a land use issue. That is an issue that I have no doubt is frustrating, but that's not anything that can be handled at this level. Certainly, we can reach out to our Winston-Salem DOT and the police and let them know, hey, there's some issues going on up here with construction, or has been. It doesn't sound like any construction is going on right now. Secondly, currently, we're not talking about the property where the car wash is. We're talking about the property to the north of that. So again, I think somehow they're going to be tied in together. We do have the engineer, I think I'm speaking correctly, that Stemmel helped with the car wash. They did not help with the car wash. I'm sitting here looking, okay, so they did not. They were representing this property. The other element is you already have HBS zoning on this piece of property, and you already have approved impervious surface. You already have an approved building. What they're asking to do is redesign the site and add a use. So, obviously it sounds like there are issues out there that need to be investigated, but I don't necessarily know that the zoning, the recommendation of for this particular rezoning request to city council is where that needs to be heard. I think we need to, as a staff, try to reach out and, talk to these individuals and then try to put them in touch. I mean, it sounds like they've talked to Keith Huff, but they haven't gotten anywhere. And again, I don't want to speak for Keith. They've had, there have been a lot of rain events over the last 6 weeks, and I know that they've been inundated with lots of requests and concerns that have come about from that. So what I would like to try to do is kind of divorce the particular issues from the zoning issue, and not discounting what they've said, but let us try to see if there's a way that we can negotiate or, basically put them in touch with folks that they need to talk to and, handle this request in this setting. But obviously that's up to the board. But that would kind of be how I would see it. There really isn't a zoning issue here. It's more of a issue related to the operation of the current site and the things that they've experienced since it sounds like, if you look on there, it's just off the north of that screen, but there's, the Sherwin-Williams is just north of Harmony Street, and the O'Reilly Auto Parts is just north of that, and it sounds like a lot of their problems happen whenever all of that drainage system was piped together, and then now, it's been coming their way, and this is just making it worse.
Yeah, and I agree with you. It's not a land use issue, so it doesn't pertain to the case. However, I want citizens to feel like they're being heard and that something's being done. If they're getting the runaround, then that concerns me, or if they're not getting calls back. So we hear you loud and clear. Is there anything else you'd like to share with us about the case?
That's our only concern, really.
Yeah.
All right.
I wish Firestone would come down our street. Seriously. Have all the room.
Before y'all leave, and again, let's go ahead and let them debate the case. But if you would get with Rory, if you'll hold up your hand, if you'll just give him your contact information, we'll try to broker some contact.
I appreciate it.
It could, Mr. Allred, somebody on this particular Google Earth view we're looking at, show us where the stormwater device for this case is going to be located.
What I'm not sure of, and I'm going to ask Luke real quick, is this the existing southern that's in the access of the site plan now?
Bottom, the grade is coming here, so it's going to get better over there.
This is the shared access point.
It's probably where that northern sediment basin is, but I think it's going to be an underground stormwater. I think it's going to be a subterranean system.
Yeah, so roughly for the most part, the shared access is probably right about where the cursor is now. Where the sediment basin is, I think there's probably been issues that hasn't been removed and that's filled up and it has been maintained, so that's what's causing the flooding issues that's building up behind the wall on there. So generally in that location is where the underground stormwater management system is going to be located. So it will be underneath the pavement and it'll be a kind of a chamber system that would do water quality and quantity at that point. Of course, when they go in for construction and everything else, they're going to have to do their sedimentation and plans and erosion control plans as well. So hopefully, when they go and construct this, it would be mucking all that out and probably redoing the sediment basement at that point and managing it too. So right now, I think it's not being managed, it's just being sitting as it is from whoever did the work prior to this time.
All right.
So just for the folks that are in opposition, you got a big graded lot there right now that has not a whole lot there to catch water.
Yeah.
And so as part of this construction process, there's going to be stormwater controls that are going to be put along that wall or pretty close to that wall And I'm not telling you it's going to fix it because I'm not an engineer,
Yeah.
but it should help alleviate some of that. And the fact that y'all have raised some awareness on the part of city staff, because right now we're just looking at the land use. They're still going to have to go through a permitting process and a design process for that stormwater system. The fact that you've brought it up, hopefully we'll have that on the radar of the appropriate city staff when they look at that to make sure that that concern is addressed.
Yeah. I understand where you say that it's not maintained, which it's not. But the water is just coming out everywhere through the walls, so.
And it will, because there's nothing there to do anything with it.
It's just gonna fall one of these days and just come out already.
We hope not.
So,
All right. Any questions for Mr. Foltz or Mrs. Foltz?
I have one, please, for Mr. Dickey.
Okay. Hold on one second. No, we're still on the opposition. right
I'm
now.
sorry.
That's all
Okay,
right.
excuse me.
Any questions for the opposition? All right, thank you so very much.
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so we've gone through the proponent's opposition, so I'm going to declare the public hearing closed at this time. Mr. Stillman.
Yes, sir.
Override my business cards with yours.
Perhaps two quick questions for Mr. Dickey concerning both of the concerns these folks just expressed. One is in your site planning of the site for the Firestone store. Do the trucks that will be going there have the sufficient radius to get in and out?
Yes, we looked at the turn movements for that, to getting in. So basically, they're going to come southbound on University, turn in. So what has been designed for that driveway, we've narrowed it down, but we provided some curbing that's mountable for the truck to be able to mount over it and then get in. That's why also those drive aisles are a little bit wider than what the original plan was
Thank
for
you.
that. So yes, that's been addressed.
And next question, I'm sorry, looking for you, but it's for staff, and it's just for my clarification. Whose responsibility is it for the maintenance of the existing wall that's giving way?
That's a question that we would have to talk about with erosion control. Again, basically, whenever you're going and you're doing a grading, when you're grading a site and you're putting in erosion control measures, and you're putting in a mechanically stabilized slope, which is a fancy term for a retaining wall, you have to go through the process to get permits. And, again, we would have to take a look and see whether those permits were issued. And if they were, again, it would be back on the property owner of the wall in question. In other words, I don't know. I haven't been out there. If you look at this, it looks like it was graded as, it almost looked like it was graded as one site, even though it's apparently two different owners. But we could talk to, I have a note here to coordinate, when we get the contact information, to talk to Keith Huff and Joe Fogarty in Stormwater, to talk to Kent Wall and David Evans in Erosion Control, and also see if we can get NCDOT drainage folks involved, because I believe University out there is a NCDOT road. So again, I think those are the folks we would have at the table. But to answer the question, ultimately it falls back on the property owner to maintain their property in good order.
And, that helps a lot. I just hope we can ask them to own up to their responsibility. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
You too, Luke.
All right, any other questions for case B1? All right.
Yeah, I've got one.
All right.
If they've got a continuing problem with the erosion control there, I'm just thinking the quickest way for them to get a response would probably be to contact DEQ, would it not? Let them come out there and take a look at it, and then that would probably escalate the urgency of the problem.
It very well could. Yeah, I mean, they certainly could do that, but again, I think at this point, if we go back and we try to
Recommend it.
broker a meeting ourselves, we'll probably be sending an email to these folks tomorrow, not, to our fellow city county staff members.
I think that would make me feel better if we initiate it for them. All right.
All right, Mr. Chairman, I move that the planning board find the request is consistent with the comprehensive plan.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Lamb, second by Mr. Grubbs. Any discussion? All those in favor, sign of aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, the same sign. That is unanimous.
Mr. Chairman, I further move the planning board recommend approval of W3607.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Lamb, second by Mr. Grubbs. Any discussion? All those in favor, sign of aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same sign. That is unanimous.
Mr. Chairman, board, we're now here from, on case B4, which is case F1637. We'll hear from Nick Smith, and then we'll hear from the proponents and the opponents.
We on B4, is what he said. Thank you.
Mr. Smith, we're ready for you.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Afternoon.
As Chris mentioned, this is case F1637. The petitioners are Jerry Stoltz and Patty Stoltz. The site is a 20.66 acre site located at the northwest and southwest intersections of Shore Road and Griffin Road. The request is for special use limited rezoning from AG agricultural to GBL general business limited use. The property is located up in the northwest corner of Forsyth County. It is located both within the jurisdiction of Tobaccoville and within Forsyth County. There's two different parcels that are a part of this that we'll be showing in just a second. It is located in GMA 3. As mentioned earlier, there are two parcels that are a part of this request. Sorry, got a laser pointer. There we go. As mentioned earlier, there's two parcels that are part of this request. This northern parcel is located within the corporate limits of Tobaccoville. This southern parcel is not located in the corporate limits of Tobaccoville. To the northwest and south is AG zoning. Up here to the north, which we'll see in the aerial as well, is a church. These are residential uses, and this is farmland right now. To the east, there is HB zoning and what is currently RS9 zoning. This HBS property right here is the Love's Truck Stop that is currently under construction. This aerial image again shows that there's a Methodist church right here to the north, residential properties to the west, and agricultural land to the south, as well as the how this land previously looked before Love started their construction project. Both parcels are generally flat and are currently cleared. When I went out there for site photos, I know the aerial right here shows these trees. They have been cleared. It is a cleared and graded site right now. As you can also tell, easy access to Fort US 52 in close proximity to Love's and some potential industrial uses as well. That is there. That makes sense for commercial, but again, it is adjacent to more residential agricultural type uses. The area plan does recommend mixed use for both of these parcels. They are part of the overall Shore Road industrial area, which recommends a mixture of residential, office, and commercial uses, and we'll go into a bit more depth in that a little bit later on during our analysis portion. Next few photos are site photos. This is looking north along Shore Road, roughly at the intersection of Shore Road and Griffin Road, just providing a perspective of the interchange with US 52. That's approximately where that interchange is. Oh, also I did put these little things in the bottom right, kind of just showing which parcels we're looking at as part. So this is all in reference to the northern subject property right now, which is in the village of Tobaccoville. This is looking north across Griffin Road into the northern subject property. This is looking west and looking east at one of the rezoning signs along Griffin Road. And then further to the west on Griffin Road, because it is a very long property, same thing, looking west and looking east along Griffin Road. Moving on to the southern subject property, this is looking southwest from the intersection of Shore Road and Griffin Road into the subject property. Again, as you can see, the trees have been cleared. This is looking south from the intersection of Shore Road and Griffin Road. You can see Love's being constructed off to the west, and this property over here is the subject property we're talking about. And ignore the speed limit sign. That was funny when I was driving by. But this is looking east and west along Griffin Road. And this is looking south across Griffin Road into the southern subject property. Next, again, this is a limited use request, so I did just provide a quick slide that has all of the uses that are being requested as part of this proposal, because the list of requested uses has changed a few times as the project's been in development. But this is the current list of uses that are being requested. I'll just leave it up there for a little bit if that's okay. So real quick, Legacy 2030 and the area plan do recommend commercial and office development for the properties adjacent to US 52, which includes the northern subject property, because they're closer to US 52, more intense, more commercial development would be appropriate according to the area plan. These plans also recommend a variety of residential types for the parcels west of Shore Road and south of Griffin Road, which in this case does include the southern subject property. For all of the properties that are part of the Shore Road industrial area, the area plan does recommend an interconnected, comprehensively designed development that is complementary to area uses with a density of less than 8 units per acre for residential uses. The reason we point that out is because there's the comprehensive design suggestion or recommendation is difficult to achieve without a site plan in this case. So in summary, the requested uses are generally consistent with the mixed-use recommendation of the Tobaccoville Area Plan Update and Legacy 2030. However, without a site-specific development plan, this specific request is inconsistent with the comprehensive design recommendations for the Shore Road industrial area. Therefore, this request is incompatible with the existing single-family neighborhood and the character of the area, as it would allow a high-intensity commercial encroachment into a rural residential area. For these and other reasons, staff does recommend denial of this request. And I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
Can you go back one slide, please?
Go back one slide?
Yep.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so the specific request is inconsistent with the comprehensive design because there's no design because of the
Correct.
site plan.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Can you just remind me, it's 20 acres or is it 24?
20.66, I believe.
We're talking a max of 160 units at the current.
Yep, 20.66.
So, one more question.
Yes,
So, in any hearing, any proposal that we have that does not require a site plan, would staff say that it was inconsistent with the comprehensive design standards?
Nick, I'll be glad to answer that.
I think maybe I don't understand the answer, but it seems like the reason it's inconsistent is because there's no site plan, there's no design. But not all cases require a site plan, so.
So I think to add a little more nuance to what Mr. Smith was saying is, due to the context of this site at kind of the edge of that suburban and rural area, given the large amount of acreage involved, those are the factors that led staff to not feel comfortable with declaring or determining that this site is comprehensively designed without a site plan. Given all the list of uses they're asking for, a lot of those are high-intensity commercial uses. We just wanted to be sure that there could be a way to make sure those uses, the way they interface with the rural residential properties around them, would be appropriate. Now, there's lots of other cases where you all might see as an L request or even a general use request that's on a smaller or more urban site. It's easier for staff to kind of accept that those will develop comprehensively given their context, but that was where our concern and ultimately our recommendation for denial came from.
Was there?
I had similar concerns, well, not concerns, questions, because I was like, well.
Adjacent residential, but, without there being any site plan, there's not any way to guarantee that. So theoretically, if you approve this with the uses that they've asked for, you could have a hotel right adjacent to the single-family residential. You could have, a large single-plate retail establishment. You could have things that were fairly intense right adjacent to the single family, which is, again, through planning, which is one of the things we try to avoid. So that's why we asked, why we said there needed to be a design, at least a two-phase that kind of shows this is going to be the commercial area, this is going to be the less intense area.
But if they do anything other than residential, it's going to be more intensive, and to the extent that a site plan in the future would be required prior to, or
a site plan would be required, but it would be required from, basically for staff to issue the permit. And as long as it met the requirements of the ordinance,
You have to approve it.
we would have to approve it. There wouldn't be any discretionary review and say, we hear you, but you can't do this here, because again, once you have the zoning in place, you can do whatever that allows, which is one of the reasons why we think it would be better to have it as a site plan, because at that point you have a little more, even if it's a two-phase site plan where you have, this is going to be our commercial pods, this will be, the less intense pods, and kind of tie those uses to those pods. That's what we're saying would get us to where we felt like it was consistent with the plan. And in this case, because it's a blank canvas of almost 21 acres, and you could have the most intense use adjacent to the single family to the west, that's our concern.
My concern, my challenge with that concept is, how can you ever do anything, how can you do assemblage and anything speculative without knowing what your uses are going to be, and then knowing that you're going to come in here with a staff recommendation for denial because you haven't met the comprehensive design requirements because of lack of site plan? That's my challenge.
I had asked a very similar question earlier in the day. A site plan would be required, is my understanding, for review only by staff. It would not come back to this board for comment and approval. This is our only bite at the apple, I think.
But how do the use requirements in terms of buffer and setback, those would apply regardless of whether you got a site plan now or not, right?
That's correct, Ms. Smith. And again, part of staff's discomfort with the request is that the area plan language that talks about a multifamily buffer area between the intense commercial area that would be located more towards the northeast of the site or the east of the site, and the rural area to the west. Again, since there's no site plan involved, we weren't sure how there would be any guarantees or assurances that there would be kind of that residential or even office institutional buffer zone. So that was staff's main concern. Mr. Lamb, to your point, I think speculative development could exist with a very generalized conceptual site plan like what was done at, I forget the name of the development, but the Kravitz did at the Shops at Glen Crossing, I think is what it was called, or Walkertown Landing, or there's been several others that have been done over the years that certainly are speculative in nature and kind of get the network of streets, at least on paper, conceptually. So that's enough for staff and the board and ultimately the commissioners to react to, but without needing to know a fully designed site plan with a use in mind.
Okay.
One of the things I love about our staff is that you guys do a great job working with petitioners. Did they just not want to add one, or what? Or delay it, or?
Again, I think that would be probably a better question for the petitioners. We conveyed our concerns, and they said that they would talk to their applicant. And again, I don't know what the financials are, as far as how the property is kind of intertwined. But I believe that we have this case 37, we're going to have 38, and it's the same owners. And I think that they want to perhaps divest or get everything rezoned at one time, and they don't really have an end user in mind. So I think, they don't want to artificially limit themselves to, the potential, and don't want to tie themselves to that plan. But again, it was an amicable conversation. We just agreed to disagree. And we had also come up with, is there a way that we can do a condition where we say that within X number of feet of both, of the western property line on both the north side and south side of Griffin Road, that, we cut some uses out, and they also weren't agreeable to that. But again, it was an amicable conversation. We just said, well, that's kind of going to leave us where at this point we don't have any choice but to recommend denial, but obviously we'll continue to help you through the process.
I'm kind of struggling with this because the location and the access is ideal for more of these industrial.
Yeah.
And as we extend our transportation,
Ms. Smith, I'm sorry, can you pull your mic down?
I'm sorry, as we extend our transportation into more rural areas like this, we're always going to have this dilemma. So I'm kind of torn of it fits industrial development because of the access, but you also have to respect the people that live there. And how many times is this going to play out?
Well, keep in mind, this request is the commercial aspect of it. This is the 37, so it's the commercial. But yes, I mean, you're right. I mean, you've got, and again, the area plan recognizes this is a good place to do commercial development, just recommends it be comprehensively designed.
As I recall, that was a big part of our consideration when we rezoned the Loves, was the potential for pretty,
How much more?
significant industrial development there.
I think it was for more intensive industrial development south of Loves rather than north of Loves.
Okay, your memory's better than mine, Jack. I just remember us talking about it.
Any other questions for Mr. Smith? Thank you, sir. So we are going into a public hearing on this case. Again, each side will have 12 minutes to speak. So if you have a lot of people, you may want to be cognizant of that time. So I'm going to call proponents first, calling Luke Dickey.
Good afternoon again. Luke Dickey with Stimmel Associates, 601 North Trade Street, Suite 200, Winston-Salem, North Carolina, 27101. As kind of the discussion has already kind of gone over, this was a very difficult one to kind of work through from this end, so we're just going to kind of go into nuances a little bit. Again, we don't have a site plan to show you. Part of that is because from a marketing standpoint, don't know exactly what would come onto this site. The intent was really to look at getting the zoning in place to see who would be interested to come on, and then look at how we can set this up to be able to allow that to move forward, along with what's being proposed on the eastern side of the site as well, which you'll review in the next case. Overall, just kind of, we did have a little bit of, I'll say, just a disagreement in terms of the interpretation of the area plan. Here is the Tobaccoville area plan from 2013, calling out that mixed use and industrial for the Shore Road industrial area. It states that the plan recommends a mixture of commercial, office, and residential for the remainder of the Shore Road industrial area. Commercial and office development is best suited for the area closest to the US 52 I-74 interchange, approximately 24 acres in size total. And then residential development is best suited for the parcels on the west side of the Shore Road, south of Griffin Road, approximately 45 acres in total in size. Just kind of breaking that down, the area that's highlighted in the yellow is 20 acres. And there's that 4-acre piece that's on the eastern side of Shore Road, so that equals the 24 acres. So our interpretation is that it's more for the commercial and office development. And then it calls out specifically then the 45 acres then would be that lot to the south, which is 45 acres. So that was kind of roughly our interpretation of what was being recommended as part of the area plan. And so one of the conditions that was requested of us was looking at putting a certain distance buffer, basically cutting those 10-acre pieces in half and limiting commercial uses and then putting residential uses on the western side back up to the area. And we just weren't comfortable with agreeing to that condition because that would have limited any other further type of issues on that. To basically cut the parcels in half, saying commercial only on front and then residential on the back. We did originally come in with an HBL zoning case, and we modified it to GBL to add the uses of multifamily and townhomes. We don't see this being really marketed for multifamily type development, but with the request of staff and working with them, we did add that and make that change. In addition, we've also removed certain uses like motor vehicle repair, maintenance, motor vehicle storage yards, car dealerships, and those type of uses from the request as well. So we've been working with trying to pare down those uses from this standpoint. You may hear from residents in regards to this case that they don't want multifamily or townhouse uses on these parcels. So that's going to be another consideration that you'll hear as well. Conditions, so we know we didn't have a site plan, and so we usually try to work out conditions that help ease those transitions then between a commercial development and residential. In this case, we have agreed to a condition of all buildings shall be set back a minimum of 100 feet from the adjacent residentially zoned properties instead of the typical 40 feet. 20-foot type 3 buffer yard shall be required along all adjacent residentially zoned properties, so increasing that from what the code minimum requirements are as a type 2. Building materials condition added to the architecture for adding brick for everything that would be on like a one-story, basically on all facades. Anything that's multi-story would be able to do brick lower level and then change to a different facade material up top. And then, as we talked about, we looked at limiting those proposed uses on the site, the balance between uses that would complement the Shore Road Industrial Park, which is part of the area plan. We're at an interstate interchange. And also then we have residential uses to the west. So that's why we try to place those conditions to help ease that transition. Because again, we don't know exactly what's going to go on these 20 acres, but we're just trying to set that up from that standpoint. One of the things was kind of talked about was looking at interconnectivity and how to comprehensively design these that kind of work together as the Shore Road area. The Lowe's travel stop kind of put a little, I would call it dent in kind of how that would work. You can see how they, right there, the south of Griffin Road, and kind of bisect this basically from what would be, we're proposing as industrial. So that moves kind of the highway business down a little bit further to that south side of Griffin Road. And then we know that we're going to be constrained on what we can do access-wise close to the interchange, working with NCDOT on Shore Road. And then also where the Loves travel, you can see where they have put their main entrance drive. We know in the future that 45 acres, that's probably the tie-in where the main drive will be there. There's a median that's going all the way up the frontage of Shore Road, so anything that comes to this site now will be right in, right out. And then we're going to have a certain setback distance from driveway permits from Shore Road on Griffin. So it really kind of, we weren't quite sure. We know we're going to have these set places where these driveways are going to be on Griffin Road and how it all ties together. So that's just kind of how we looked at from an interconnectivity and just kind of looking at how that would be addressed. We did have a neighborhood outreach, as we always do. We sent out a total of 51 invites. Particularly, you can see we held it as a joint meeting for both of the cases, and we extended out down Griffin Road a little bit further. The yellow line is where the property is. The white line is, the thicker line is actually the 500-foot notification distance, and we went well beyond that to the west. For that, we did have 45 neighbors attend that meeting, and we had one phone call in regards to that one individual that could not attend. Kind of reasons to approve is, again, the Tobacco area plans from our interpretation calls for office and commercial uses on the subject property. I would question, what type of office uses would we put here out in this more rural area? That's another thing, just kind of figure out is there an office market out in this location? The site is located adjacent to an interchange and will serve a future industrial park. The conditions have been placed on the request to increase building setbacks, landscape buffers, and architectural building materials for added protection to adjacent residential properties. And one other thing is, the new beltway is just basically about 3,300 feet south of this site. So that's going to bring a lot more traffic kind of coming through this area as well. So really what it sets up is kind of more of a vehicle-oriented commercial area on that interchange. But we're trying to, again, add those protections that it's going to be higher quality with the building condition for brick. So that's going to help, pare that down from an expense standpoint, what type of uses that you would put in there. One other thing I would like to mention is just kind of like the very last sentence in the Shore Road industrial area. I find is interesting. It says, alternatively, the west side of Shore Road could be developed as an industrial business park using the same development principles as recommended for the east side of the road. So the area plan says if there's not a need for commercial here, we could also look at this as being industrial. And so then where does that transition come from and protections there? So, it's just, I think it was just more of this matter of interpretation in terms of what the area plan kind of stated. Our position is this is kind of more of a commercial mixed use from that standpoint. We did leave the opportunity for office. We worked with staff to provide for the option for multifamily to go on the site as a transition if there's a market for that. But again, I think you're going to hear from neighbors that they're also concerned about that use being included in the request. So I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have any.
I have a question. So I get the idea, I get the mixed use from the recommendation and office and commercial, but it is a really, and I know we don't know who the end users may potentially be, but could some uses have been taken out to make it more palatable for the neighbors? Some of them, I know they're really going to hate. So just wondering.
Yeah, so again, we've had conversations with staff and we've started removing some uses from the request there. I'm sure we'll hear some additional uses from what was talked about with the neighbors at the neighborhood meeting that we had. Those primary uses were basically the multifamily townhomes and also like a microbrewery, microdistillery, I'm sure, and a hotel. Those are the primary ones that we heard in that conversation from this, and there may be others that get mentioned today.
That's interesting.
My question is, sorry, go ahead.
No, just as a follow-up to Walter's question, you had mentioned a few that were taking out. So can you clarify or confirm which were removed?
Yeah, so again, we've pared down the amount of uses from what's permitted within the GB zoning district already, so I don't know which ones those were, like, typical from those standpoints. Staff came back and requested us to remove some more of the commercial uses, such as focus more on the motor vehicle repair, maintenance, storage yard, paint and body shops, and things like that. So those have been removed.
So I know that, like, you can't come up with a site plan, but we all know it's good development, right? You find land value by finding a use and then backing into that, right? Like, that's how you set value. So I'm sure that as you come up with a price, you also come up with some options for what would fit there in an intended seller. I think, like, some of that would have been helpful to probably engage your community engagement, and as well as bring a potential site plan, just to visualize what could be there, right? We all know that multifamily has one, a commercial asset has one, a hotel has one, so those are different bases. And so that's how we set that value. So I think that's potentially where, you could fit some uses, and then it would also be a really good marketing strategy as a developer, and unless you want the developer to set the price, right, based on the use. And I don't know how that'll fare, but that's neither here nor there. I think that would be helpful to have those conversations because it's easier to see.
Yeah, I completely understand. It's just a dilemma of, we've got out parcels that most likely be on Shore Road, and then what is that going to transition to, whether it's just at that point, we can see a hotel being up closer, and then could it be a distribution little warehouse that kind of transitions back to the backside? We just don't, it's one of those things that we can draw up a plan and we know it's going to change completely from that standpoint. So that's what we didn't want to come for with a plan of a special use site plan, as kind of that the area plan was saying, because at that point we tie ourselves to a special use site plan that's going to change, and we have to keep coming back to the process every time we want to change it. So that was the rationale that we took in this approach for today.
Any additional questions for Luke?
I guess it's for you or for staff. You had a list of conditions, sort of the setbacks and that. Was there any limits on the height of the buildings next to the residential areas, or what's the maximum height in some of these districts?
You'd want your landscape yard to be the buffer, right? So that you're not.
Just looking at the tops.
Yeah, that's the condition. I mean, if you set it back far enough.
Yeah, I believe it'd be 60 feet in GB.
I was going to say 60 feet is allowed in GB. There's also a provision where basically it requires a setback if you're within 40 feet of residential property. And again, in the underlying zoning, I believe it's either 40 or 45 feet currently.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Dickey.
All right, thank you very much.
How much time is left for?
5 minutes.
All right. Would anyone else like to speak in support? All right, we will now move to the opposition. I have signed up to speak Rachel Starling, Mayor Myron Marion, Stacy Tolbert, James Knotts, and Luann Foltz. So whoever wants to come first, if you will state your name, address, and zip code for the record. And again, we have a total of 12 minutes.
Excuse me, sorry about that.
Thank you, planning board members. Good afternoon. My name is Stacy Talbert. I reside at 1755 Old Griffin Road. That zip code is 27045.
Thank you.
I come to you today to speak on behalf of many family, friends, neighbors, all of those in regard to rezoning request F-1637. And we wanted to put our time together, so if I may, I would just like those who I'm speaking on behalf of today and who I represent to please stand just want to kind of give you an idea of, even though all of us are not speaking, we do have a crowd here today. Thank you. As the rezoning petition is presented to you today, we are opposed to this request. We do agree with staff. A site plan would be much more palatable, considering the area, considering the rural nature of where we live, and so forth and so on. We have had multiple meetings with lengthy conversations to come to this conclusion. However, we would like the opportunity to reach a common ground with the petitioner, and we ask for your support to do that. We have studied the definitions of the uses proposed and the request the following be removed from the allowed list in the general business limited proposal that they are proposing. Residential building multifamily, residential building townhouse, hotel or motel, microbrewery or microdistillery, restaurant with drive-through service, and services B. Of the permitted uses requested, we feel these mentioned are not appropriate to be located so close to residential single family. These are our homes. While we know there are many others on this list, in the meetings that we've had, we've tried to come up with the ones we just can't quite swallow. Our last request is for a change in a condition of approval listed on the staff report. Under section Other Requirements in the staff report, condition D requires a 20-foot type 3 buffer yard to be planted along all adjacent residentially zoned properties. We request this condition be expanded to read similar to what is with the nearby F-1638 rezoning request. We propose the following language to replace the current condition. A type 3 buffer yard shall be required along all adjacent residentially zoned properties. This required type 3 buffer yard shall contain an earthen berm with a minimum height of 4 feet and a minimum crown of 2 feet in accordance with the requirements of UDO section 632B4. The required number of plantings in this buffer yard may not be reduced through the use of a fence, wall, or earthen berm. Again, almost exact to what you see the condition for F-1638. We request this change due to the topography of the land. The berm will create a taller buffer to lessen the visual impact of commercial development in our area. I can certainly speak for myself that when I look out my front door, these properties are what we see. We can even already see the Love's Truck Stop being constructed at the top of the hill. In closing, we understand that commercial development is coming to our area. We feel that it might be inevitable. The long for our continued quality of life. I long for the life of my children, and I want them to feel safe in their homes. And what goes on these parcels is really going to make a difference in how they feel as they grow and how we all feel as we age in our neighborhood. We know our dark skies and quiet evenings and nights are coming to an end sooner than we had hoped. We ask for your support in these requested changes to the petition. If the rezoning is approved, we believe compromise is the best answer and the best thing that we can have for our community. Thank you for your time and your consideration.
Thank you. Ms. Tolbert, I have a question for you. Looking at some of the exclusions, I get hotel, things of that nature. What's the issue with multifamily?
And townhouse.
And townhomes.
We feel that a lot of times in the multifamily, we think it brings some crime. We think it brings some in and out traffic all the time. That's another reason why we didn't really want a restaurant with a drive-through. We feel like it's going to be open probably 24 hours. The density that could be put on these properties for multifamily and townhomes, we don't really see someone coming along and wanting to do single family. I'll be honest, I don't believe that they would be high-end townhomes with a Love's truck stop right across the road. If a Love's truck stop was there, I don't think the majority of us would have built there. This is family land. It's been in our family for over 100 years. And so that is why we're there now, but it's just what's coming to our area. So we just felt like the multifamily and the townhomes would just add that much more of an impact. Most of the time it's multifamily. We're gonna probably see a high rise with a possibility of 80+ units. And then two, just the traffic generation that it can bring is why we all felt that multifamily could be quite a bit of an impact to our area from, just what we're used to.
Okay, and I'm not trying to put you on the spot. I'm just trying to get educated.
Yes, sir.
Because we run across this a lot. We're dealing with redevelopment in certain areas. So can you kind of give me an idea of your definition of multifamily? When you think of multifamily, what do you think of?
Apartments and condos is generally what I see as what would bring multifamily.
I think that there are apartments downtown charging $3,000 a month rent.
Are they across from a Love's truck stop or an industrial park?
Then that's a good point, but some of them are across from vacant lots.
Right.
Some of them are still in areas that are still being redeveloped where there's all kind of activity still going on. So a Love's truck stop may be better than some of this that they're seeing, but I really appreciate your answer.
Sure. Where we live now, it's large lots. I have livestock. A lot of people around me have livestock. We're more used to that agricultural rural feel than residents that is just that dense in our area.
Could I provide just a glimpse? Because I think you're thinking height. Multifamily could also mean a 2-story walk-up. You got a lot of land here. So potentially shorter than some of y'all's homes. Over, 20 acres is quite a big amount of land to program. Think walking paths. Multifamily doesn't only mean high rise. And so I encourage you to think of it as a separate way. Also, townhome communities have come a long way. We have a housing shortage in our area. And I think, I'll be honest with you and everyone here, I think housing is an appropriate use for a lot of spaces because we need it. We need to grow our county. But I respect you and your definition of just multifamily doesn't mean high all the time.
And I agree. As staff mentioned too, I think if we did have a site plan that might show multifamily, if it might change our minds a little bit about what something like that might look like on this property or these properties, but we don't have that. And so we're thinking the worst. We're thinking the high rises. We're thinking fit as many units on this property as you can.
I did the math, right? And,
yeah, there's a lot.
It's not like I do this for a living. You stack about 40 on each story. So it's really not that much in terms of that, but I can understand that it feels overwhelming.
Right.
Any additional questions for Ms. Tolbert? Thank you so much. How much time is left?
8 minutes.
All right. We have 8 minutes left, and I see 2 coming up.
I won't take long. James Knox, 125, Buckhaven Court, Rural Hall, North Carolina, actually in the city of Winston. On the map.
Your zip code.
27045.
Thank you, Mr.
On the
Knox.
map, I'm further down. She's talking about housing. I live right across from there. I have water gushing through my backyard, my neighbor's backyard from that development across the road from me. So they may end up with some of that too. My concern is the one that is next to 52. I was on the Soil and Water Conservation Board for 4 years. That was one of our babies that we that was in our contract. They grew corn and everything else there for 4 years. it really kills me to see all this farmland being changed. I mean, I know y'all have done some developments that were farmland up in Kernersville and all this little area. I mean, just because somebody wants to get rich and they don't want to farm anymore, we keep that up. We're not going to have any farmers. We're not going to have any food. Now, as far as putting people up there, in houses, I would rather have houses than some other stuff. But now there is a restaurant in Love's. Love's is going to have a restaurant in it. It's a Bojangles, actually, I understand. But I wanted something else, but that's what I understand we got. But anyway, so I'll speak more on opposition and stuff to the next one. It affects me a lot more than this one, but I just want to say I hate seeing that farmland. And they cleared those trees, and I knew something was coming. It hurts me to see farmland going bye-bye. We have so little of it left in Forsyth County anymore. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Knotts. Any questions for Mr. Knotts? Thank you.
6 minutes.
All right.
Rachel Starling, 1690 Griffin Road, Rural Hall, 27045. Those that are here with me today in opposition, would you please stand? It's similar to Stacy as she spoke. Ultimately, thank you very much. Ultimately, we are opposed to the rezoning of the land to GBL. There is no site plan, and the current proposal does not meet the Legacy 2030 plan usage. Without a site plan, we have no idea of what to expect with the broad usage outline for rezoning to GBL. And as Stacy said, she read the list of what we're strictly opposed to. We also have concerns with traffic, noise, and unsightly buildings in the horizon. If the properties are approved to be developed, a tall berm of at least 10 feet with the most dense Type 3 buffer yard on top of the berm and the 100 feet setback requirement should be required. This request would be across properties on both sides of the road for cosmetic and erosion purposes. I'm now going to focus on my family's personal property, 1690 Griffin Road, and my parents' property, 1650 Griffin Road. Those fields are not flat. They're a rolling downhill, and we live on the downhill side of it. My parents' house is only 44 feet from the proposed rezoning site. We have additional concerns with the potential use of the land due to stormwater and water runoff onto our properties. The property directly above 1650 Griffin Road was recently cleared with no fence barrier in place, which caused the water and mud to increase even more. The changes in water flow and amounts will further erode our land. Our water flow runs to Muddy Creek, which ends up in Yadkin River. Another reason for our opposition is residents in the area have already put their houses up for sale because of the proposed rezonings of F-1637 and F-1638 and the Love's truck stop that the commissioners approved. The rezoning is diminishing the value of all the residential properties in our area. The petitioners do not live anywhere near the properties that are being petitioned to be rezoned, so they are not concerned about what happens in our community. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Ms. Starling. Are there any questions for Ms. Starling? Thank you. How much time?
4 minutes.
All right.
Hello, members of the planning board and staff. My name is Myron Marion. I'm 3500 Richardson Avenue in Tobaccoville. I'd like to, for the council members that are present in the audience, please stand. Again, we're representing our reply to the staff at their request of what we feel, would be for, sufficient for Tobaccoville based on our area plan. And again, we did do a comprehensive plan for the, Tobaccoville going forward for you guys, that you can refer to. At the request of staff, we decided that overlooking at for the mixed-use area of this development, we feel that a neighborhood business type approach or zoning would be more pleasant for that area. Would separate industrial, then have the business in the middle, and then the residential. Be kind of like a general transition from one to the other. Therefore, we propose this to the planning staff with the exception of hopefully that maybe like an attorney's office or a home bakery or like a small eat-in restaurant or a craft shop. Something of that type of business would be, grow up in this particular area to augment the transition from totally residential to industrial, with non-residential in the, mixed in with the businesses. That's why the NB would be, I think, a better suit for it than the GB. Again, that was our reply to the staff. Again, you've been discussed about the site plans or lack thereof. We've also talked about the number of trips that were generated, and there's been no traffic studies, looking at that for that particular area, especially with the poor condition of the bridge. That'll probably have to be, replaced here in the near future with the upcoming Love's Truck Stop and the traffic that's going to suddenly start throwing out there with people coming in and out, constantly across that bridge. And we'd like to make a notification that if this case is postponed for any reason, we would like to discuss with the petitioner a little bit further about possibly changing to that zoning, and would that be legitimate more for their future plans that they would like to see, coming in this area to go along match with what the Village of Tobacco's overlay district would dictate. Are there any questions?
Yes, sir.
Are there any questions for? No, sir. Thank you so very kindly.
All right, thank you.
We have 2 minutes left for anyone else who would like to speak in opposition. Would anyone else like to speak for the last 2 minutes? All right, seeing no one, I'm going to Again, if you would state your name, address, and zip code for the record, please.
Afternoon, my name is Matthew Dean Schaefer, and I live at 3040 Ren West Court, Tobaccoville. I think it's an honor to be here today on behalf of the community, even though I don't live directly behind or beside the property. I'm a resident of Tobaccoville, so I feel it's important to be here. So I know Jerry. He's a brother in the Lord. We attended church together and served at New Hope United Methodist Church, so I know both parties. And I also know a little bit about this process. I work for a construction materials company, and nobody likes a quarry in their backyard, so I'm kind of used to this, but I'm not used to speaking, obviously. But, we rank right up there with like landfills and strip clubs and that sort of thing. So I see both sides of this, and I have a lot of respect for these people that I've gotten to know here personally, and I've got a lot of respect for you, Mr. Stoltz, and I would just ask that you would consider their requests today and in the future. Thank you.
How much time is left?
40 seconds.
40 seconds. All right, seeing no one, I declare the public hearing closed.
Mr. Chairman.
From the board or staff?
I do want to point out a quirk. It's not a quirk of our ordinance. It is intentional. But if it were this board's desire to ask the petitioner to remove the uses that were specifically mentioned as being objectionable, there would actually need to be a condition that said that this rezoning would not include those uses. And the reason why is there is a provision in the ordinance under the use conditions for the use shopping center and shopping center small that says that all uses allowed in the district are basically otherwise allowed if you build a shopping center. If you don't build a shopping center, it doesn't come into play. But if a shopping center were to be built, all those other uses would come into play. So if those are the specific objectionable uses, those need to be specifically called out as not allowed.
All right.
So procedurally, where does that leave us? Are we allowed to modify these or modify the conditions, or do we need to allow the petitioner an opportunity to confer with the opponents?
You would, well, again, I think you can play it, several different ways. You could ask the petitioners if they would be willing to specifically remove those uses, and if they were, then, they could agree to it. If they would prefer to request a continuance and come back, for, at your meeting in March or April, whenever they wanted to continue it to, obviously it would be up to them. Ultimately, the planning board can move the item forward with a recommendation that those uses specifically be prohibited, but prior to it going to the elected body, if they don't agree to those conditions, then, essentially they wouldn't sign that said the written consent conditions that included that. And if they did not agree to that, then at that point, the commissioners would have they could either approve it without that condition, or they could deny it because they didn't agree to the condition. But the commissioners cannot impose a condition that they do not agree to, if that makes sense.
Petitioner.
Excuse me?
They being the
Correct.
petitioner.
They being the property owner.
Property
Correct.
owner petitioner.
Yes.
Okay.
One of the only issues I have with starting to go through the list of uses that are opposed is that, in my experience, I think some of them can be incorporated into this area quite well. We just don't have a site plan that shows us how.
Right, and I think in that case, and I agree with you, I think to ask the petitioner to remove something without a site plan, you're limiting what they can do.
And it was brought up, and I tell you, every week, every month, this is something, people tell us what uses they don't want, and I could have guessed so wrong. But I would say that we can figure that out if that's what we want to do. We'll discuss that. I would challenge people. We say it every month. I know everybody's not watching us. It's not primetime TV. But
not yet.
To reconsider,
wait till Sunday.
Like Mrs. McCrae said, multifamily and townhouses do not have to be a curse word. They don't have to be ugly. They don't have to be crime-ridden, and I don't think it's fair for us to assume that they would be. At one point in time in most of our lives, we have lived in an apartment. So let's remember that. Personally, I think the use, as we often say, multifamily townhomes are used for transitions. You transition from your single-family house to multifamily, to office and commercial, to heavier uses. That's how it works. And that creates a smooth transition. Now, for those who are not used to living around that, it seems very absurd and hard to believe. But I think that is a very smart way of development and growth. That's where we hopefully are moving towards. And that's just something I wanted to bring up. For this case, I'm gonna keep saying it every month if I have to. But we'll see how the rest of you all feel about how we want to move forward. I think the petitioner probably does need to do some rethinking.
Yeah, I would say, when you have this much land, your job is to help us dream and to help your community dream. So I would come back with something just to show possibilities. I think multifamily could easily be accommodated here. I think townhomes could easily be accommodated here. I think you could have a variety of commercial uses here. I think that you could make a really beautiful concept that feels and belongs within your community over 20 acres. It is a large amount of land. I promise you will find a buyer if you help them dream as well.
Yeah, I agree. I was struggling with this, and thank you all again for being here this evening. I, on principle, would be okay with the majority of this usage. I think this site is great for such a mixed-use development and residential as well. But it gives me great pause when the staff has a level of discomfort. And, we as a board often get into the minute details of the transportation, accessibility, connectivity, stormwater, erosion, none of which we can do in the absence of a site plan. So that's sort of where I'm left today.
So to Walter and Mo's points, this is where the site plan or the lack thereof is so important, because to Ms. Tolbert's point, you automatically think the worst. You hear apartment and you think, or townhouse, and you think sky high, all over. I come from just about as far away in Forsyth County as you can get from this in the eastern part of Forsyth County. So it's a long way away geographically. Development-wise, we're like your first cousins because I'm witnessing the same thing in the part of Forsyth County that I come from. The loss of farmland, the loss of community connections that come with, let's face it, generations of people living side by side, and that is a painful thing to experience. And what I will say is if you come back with a site plan that helps people maybe visualize that, well, maybe that what we're hearing is not so bad, especially with this group who I'm going to take a moment to commend, because I feel like, Walter, I sit up here every month and wag my finger at people from the northern side of Forsyth County and say, you gotta embrace the fact that things are going to change. As heartbreaking as it is, as much as you don't want to see it, the Beltway in particular is going to bring change. And I say it and I say it and I say it. And it's refreshing to me to hear folks not just say, we don't want anything to change, by God, it's going to stay this way forever. And that's not what you're here saying. As much as you'd probably like to, because I've sat where you're sitting. I didn't hear that from you. And from my perspective, that's important because it can't stay exactly like it is. And so finding ways to make that growth a quality growth and quality development, which I think is what we're all here trying to do. You went a long way with me when you didn't just walk in here and say, absolutely, we just want it to stay just like it is, because I'm sure you do, and I wish I could wave a magic wand and help you do that while still encouraging growth and development, but there's a trade-off that we have to reach, and I think
Density can be one little thing in a very big lot, but it's just the one word is used for all of it, no matter how big or small it is. That would be my recommendation.
All right, so we've had lots of dialogue. Would anyone like to make a motion at this point?
I'd like to make one more comment before someone makes a motion.
All right.
I'm still challenged by, there needs to be some room for speculation. And a site plan is not your diagrammer taking a pencil and drawing it out. It's an expensive thing to do for a project that's mixed use and covers 20 acres. I don't know what it'll cost. I don't know if it costs $50,000 or what it'll cost, but it's a big, it's a number to really plan it out and draft it out. So when you're really in dense areas, I understand it's different, but this is not a dense area, and it is easier to handle speculation in a less dense area than it is in a real dense area. And that's why I understand form-based code downtown and all that kind of stuff. I understand why there's just layers and layers and layers of regulation downtown because it's so dense. But as you get further out, there needs to be some room for speculation. And I think the default you've got going on right now, the planning staff review, and hey, I respect and think you guys do a great job. I think just, I appreciate the effort you put into it, but there's got, for the default position B, if you don't generate a site plan, we're going to just say you've not met the comprehensive design requirement for us giving you a recommendation or for approval. Anyway.
I'll respond to that a little bit. I'm not really speaking for you, but I don't think you're saying in all circumstances, if you don't have a site plan, it's not going to work. It's this particular combination of large acreage and the variety of uses and the impact on the surrounding areas.
Yeah.
Is the difference to me.
Yeah, what I was going to say is it's actually the antithesis of what you said. I mean, because of the fact that it is wide open and it is such a drastic change from what is there currently, we feel like we owe it to the folks that took the time to take part in the plan to get it right. And trying to get it right, again, talks about being comprehensively designed and thought out. And again, a lot, it would probably be these same uses, but again, we would see at least on a macro scale, how it would be laid out. And again, obviously, we all have our opinions. We all have the way that we think it should be done. I don't disagree with what you're saying on as a general rule. And I think staff has, especially with the tool that we have dealing with limited uses, I think we have been able to severely curtail and step back from asking for a site plan in all occasions. This is one of the few times that I remember that we've actually had a case that's come before the planning board probably in the last 8 or 10 years where, basically our recommendation for denial is hinging on the fact we don't have a site plan. It's just because it's such a wide open area and we feel like we need to get it right because of the pressures that are going to be coming with the Beltway and the industrial park across the street, et cetera. We want to make sure that we try to set the stage. And again, we may not agree with the town of Tobaccoville exactly, and we may not agree with the neighbors, but I think we're all on the same page and want to try to make sure that whatever goes there is consistent with the plan and is kind of an asset. So that's why in this particular instance, we have felt strongly on at least having a first phase of a two-phase plan. But again, that's our staff position, and obviously, if that's not the board's position, if that's not the county commissioner's position, just like anything else, we will always work with our planning staff and our elected officials and our citizenry and the developers to, do whatever the will of the people is, ultimately the decision makers in this case.
Would the two-step plan process be helpful to a situation like this?
Unless perhaps, but again, if it's a two-phase plan, it's essentially it shows the street layout and lots, but it doesn't really talk about what uses would go where. It really doesn't get us any further than where we are today. But if they were to say, come up with a lot configuration and some type of a street layout and say, we would allow these uses in this area, which is the closest to the residential, and then we would have everything else on all, the remainder. That's kind of what we're talking about. And again, I think the conditions have gone towards that, dealing with building design and those kind of things, talking about brick and those kind of things. We can deal with that, but it's more how we transition from the most intense to the existing residential that I feel like is the reason why we need a plan.
What are the options? Let's talk about, if we deny today, right? How would the petitioner have the opportunity to pull it back before it goes to city council for them? And
they can take the chances and go to the county commission.
I would say, this one goes to the county commissioners. Obviously, it runs the gamut. In other words, if let's just say that the planning board recommends denial of this, and they say, we want to roll the dice and we want to go ahead forward and talk to the commissioners and have the public hearing there, and they may get approved what they want. They may hear what the planning board says and say, and talk to the property owner and say, is there a way that we can try to, whether it be eliminate uses, whether it be, come up with a two-phase plan. I don't know. And perhaps that's a question best asked of the petitioner, but, obviously they have filed a petition requesting a rezoning, and they have met the requirements thereof, and they have a due process. If they want to go forward, regardless of this recommendation, they can.
All right, would anyone like to bring a motion forward at this time?
One last question, I apologize.
Yes.
All right, so procedure, adding on to it, so they can, prior to the elected body making a decision, they can request withdrawal or something like that without triggering the waiting period for a new.
Correct.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Could you all hear what?
I'm sorry, I apologize.
Okay, they heard you. All right.
I'll make one. Or is it closed or?
Yeah,
Go for it.
who's ever ready?
Go right ahead.
I move that the planning board find that the request is inconsistent with the comprehensive plan.
I'll second that.
I have a motion by Ms. Murray and a second by Mr. Grubbs. Any discussion? All those in favor, sign of aye. Aye. Oppose the same sign? That is unanimous. Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry.
One. Okay.
I further move that the planning board recommend denial of F 1637.
Second.
I have a motion by Ms. McRae, a second by Mr. Grubbs. Any discussion? All those in favor, sign of aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Aye.
It's a 6-3.
So motion passes 6-3.
This will go, just, obviously, obviously, it depends on what the petitioner does, but this will go forward to the county commissioners, more than likely sometime in early March at this point.
That was 4, wasn't it?
Mr. Chairman of the board, the next case is case F-1638, and we'll hear from Nick again.
If anyone would like to leave, I'm going to give just a second so those can leave that are leaving. Have a great evening. All right, thank you, Mr. Smith.
Good afternoon again, everyone. This is, as Chris mentioned, this is case F-1638. The petitioners are Jerry Stoltz and ITAC 484 LLC. It is a 126.31 acre site on the east side of Shore Road and south of US 52. The request is for special use rezoning from RS9 to limited industrial special use 2-phase. Again, this is right across the street from where we just talked about, so it's up in the northwest corner of the county, located in GMA 3. As you can see on the location map, there is AG zoning across the street and to the south. It is bordered by US 52 on the northeast side with HBS and HB adjacent to it as well. In this area, you can see that it is currently a partially developed site with a home right here and an historic home right here. This is the historic Columbus Cap Farmhouse, historic site. Subject properties, in terms of topography, do have roughly a 100-foot decrease from here to the stream, and then a 100-foot increase from there up to US 52. The area plan recommendations for this area are for industrial type uses, and again, it is part of the overall Shore Road industrial area. And time for some site photos. This is looking west from Shore Road down Cap Farm Road. This is approximately where the entrance to the industrial park will be. This is looking northeast from Shore Road into the subject property. This is looking north and south along Shore Road. As you can see, the Love's Truck Stop is right next door. And then further up Shore Road, this is looking north and south along Shore Road again at a different rezoning sign. This is once again looking west from Shore Road into the subject property, again, just emphasizing the current state and current conditions of the site. This is a site plan for the request. It proposes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 industrial lots with primarily industrial uses. After comments with NCDOT, they are proposing turn lanes into the site from both directions, from north and south. The northbound turn lane is going to have 100 feet of taper and 50 feet of storage, and the southbound turn lane will have 125 feet of taper and appropriate deceleration and taper once they work on the permit. The TIA states that 2,714 trips per day are expected. And as with every 2-phase zoning request, this is just the phase 1 site plan. All the sites will be reviewed through the final development plan process as well, once they find tenants. In terms of analysis, Legacy 2030 does recognize the scarcity of good industrial land and seeks to promote the wisest economic use of those limited resources to generate needed jobs and create wealth for our community. The plan recommends following the recommendations of area plans and other development guides when considering industrial sites. And the proposed development recognizes the adjacent residential zoning and the visual impact of the site from US 52 and includes provisions for enhanced screening. Some of those screenings are the 20-foot type 2 buffer yard that is required along the southern property line against residential zoning. There's a condition for a 20-foot type 3 buffer yard with a 4-foot earthen berm along Shore Road. Additionally, along US 52, there's a requirement for a thoroughfare overlay district that is a 20-foot type 2 buffer yard. Additional buffering, structure placement, and use conditions can also be addressed during final development plan approval. So in summary, the request is consistent with the comprehensive design goals and industrial use recommendations of the Tobaccoville Area Plan Update and Legacy 2030. With easy access to US 52, the Northern Beltway, and on-site utilities, this site is well suited for industrial development. Therefore, staff does recommend approval, and the site plan does meet all UDO requirements for the Phase 1 rezoning. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions for staff? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So we will, excuse me, we'll have a public hearing on this as well. We will start with the proponents. Again, each side will have 12 minutes. We have Luke Dickey and also Myron Marion speaking in support.
Good evening now. Luke Dickey with Stimmel Associates, 601 North Trade Street, Suite 200, Winston-Salem, 27101. This case, I think, is a little bit more cut and dry in terms of looking at what the area plan recommendation is for this and the ability to do a two-phase kind of site plan. Again, the area plan calls for this to be an industrial site, so you can see it highlighted there in the overall area for industrial. There's still quite a bit of acreage left to the south of this site being proposed in the area plan for industrial. The site plan, again, has the main road coming off of Shore Road at that point, and then we're showing it basically kind of how it could potentially be lotted out. And then, of course, we got limited uses per the conditions for this. But again, with the site being industrial, it's what we're looking at, it kind of limits more to our uses that we're specifically looking at for this site. So the two-phase plan kind of works well, showing where a road would come in, how it could lot out. Could lot 1, 2, and 3 be developed on their own? Yes, but could a larger user eventually come in and take up lot 1, 2, and 3? That could be a potential too. So that's what the two-phase allows us to do, is be able to do that site plan and that configuration there. But we know the general road network is going to stay where it needs to be from there. So again, the main entrance comes off of Shore Road. We do show a stub to the south for future development because the recommendation of that is to, be more of an industrial park as well. So providing that connectivity to the south. The road will provide access to future development and lots. The request is, again, two-phase to provide that flexibility for future industrial development and users. And like I mentioned, they can be combined or further subdivided depending on need and who comes into the site. And of course, then the final development plans then comes back to you as planning board members to review. And as Mr. Smith had mentioned, then we can actually look at buffering, whether it's sufficient enough against neighbors as well from this standpoint. One thing I will mention, with the zoning is that we will be providing buffers along the southern portion of this site, which is actually recommended to be industrial in the future. So, if that ever comes in, then obviously that buffer can go away. But since we are up against an adjacent property owner that is residential, so those buffers would be put in place for that. The conditions that we, of course, have agreed to, as mentioned, was a condition for a type 3 buffer yard with a minimum 4-foot high berm along Shore Road. This is along the frontage instead of your typical 10-foot street yard. I believe that was also a condition as part of the Loves case, so that's just continuing that on down the way. We did a condition to maintain planning requirements for a type 3 buffer yard along the adjacent residentially zoned property, so we can't add a fence down there and reduce the planting. If you want to add a fence, you still have to do all the planting that's going to be required there. And then we've also limited the proposed uses with planning staff to focus on industrial uses and not to include commercial use permitted within the LI zoning district. So we really tried to be more succinct on what those permitted uses would be. Again, we did have that part as the combined neighborhood outreach with the neighbors. We didn't have a whole lot of comments in regards to the industrial side. It was focused more on the commercial side. But we did have a neighbor that's located to the south that obviously has concerns about, the land being converted, old family land to industrial, while they obviously would still remain there with the family land that they've owned for a long time, and just concerns about the impacts that would have onto their facility, their home place as well. Again, for reasons of approval is the Legacy 2030 and the Tobacco area plans does recommend this for industrial uses for the subject property. Provides an economic development opportunity within Forsyth County with the site with easy access to 52, I-74, and the Northern Beltway. Proposed traffic generation is actually more than 50% less than the potential traffic generation if this was developed as a single-family development over that 126 acres. So you're talking like 2,700 trips as compared to over 5,000 plus trips that could be done if it was single-family. And that's in the staff report. Final development plans, again, will come back and require review by the planning board. And then, of course, planning staff recommends approval. I'd be happy to answer. And I will point out, we did have a concept plan for this, and this is what that two-phase plan was based off of, and it's easier to lay out for industrial properties how that could be. So this is what we had shared with the neighborhood, and that was also in the neighborhood outreach report that was provided to you as well. So I'd be happy to answer any questions.
I see none. Thank you.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, I'm just going to ask if, and this is not a land use question, do you have the support of Greater Winston-Salem?
Yes, Greater Winston-Salem, Inc., they've been in discussions with this. They know they've got, I think, 78 active projects or something that they're trying to seek locations, so they definitely have their eye on this site for that opportunity.
That's good for everyone in the room to hear, I think. Thank you.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you. How much time is left?
8 minutes.
All right.
Wrong one. Oh, whoops, thank you. Sorry, sir, give me 1 second. Get out of your way. Let's see. I don't know if I get it to work. Like slideshow, current site. There we go.
Hello, my name is Myron Marion, 3500 Richardson Avenue, Tobaccoville, zip code 27050. Again, I represent the viewpoints for the council of Tobaccoville. Again, you've already met some of the folks that are here. I'd like to bring up the point that we did agree with staff on recommendation on this. Again, the current area plan that we have, that we talked about, does fit with our plans for industrial use going forward and future development and future growth. We'd also like to point out that we would like to see a maximum buffer, allowed for this particular site as it develops. So for the existing neighborhood, residential owners that are going to stay there, as the truck traffic increases, stuff like that through the area, especially for the heavy industrial, we'd like to see them kind of protected and buffered from the light, noise, stuff like that that's going to be in this area. Otherwise, we think this is a good fit with our distillery, no recycling centers, no service type B, no testing or research lab, or no wholesale trade B. Industrial. Other industrial uses are fine with us for our plan. So again, we are in favor of this proposal. Thank you.
Excuse me, Mayor Marion, could you please call those out again?
Sure.
So I did make an extra slide that just shows A, B, and C as well. So just wanted to.
All right, it would be manufacturing B,
Yes.
microbrewery or distillery,
Yep.
recycling centers,
Yes.
services type B, testing or research lab, wholesale trade B.
Thank you.
And most of those are going to be type B, I think stands for more that they can have outdoor type uses versus indoor type, uses. I think the indoor would be more suitable for our area. Because we keep the noise down, everything be contained inside the building versus just everything thrown outside and all the, noise and work outside.
Question.
Yes.
The distillery, is it that you all don't want the potential for a tasting room? I mean, it's manufacturing, that's why.
Yeah, this is going to be more of a manufacturing thing.
Well, I mean,
I think he's
a
asking why
distillery
you're
or a
opposed to
brewery is
that.
a manufacturer. I'm just asking.
Yeah, more so than a tasting lab or something, yeah. That's what the council, views that?
Well, I was just saying, it's the concern that a manufacturer making beer,
Sir, I'm sorry, you have to be sworn in. All right.
Yeah, okay.
I think he's trying to answer what he brought to our council.
Yeah, I know, everybody has to announce themselves and addresses, all of that, I was just asking. So the concern is activity
Right,
at a brewery, not the manufacturer itself.
right.
Okay,
It's
that's my
self-contained
question.
inside only.
Okay, I got you. There we go.
Any
How
other
much
questions?
time is, any more questions?
No.
How much time is left?
6 minutes, and Mr. Chairman, I did want to point out one thing that I think there might be some misunderstanding of what manufacturing B is with regard to whether it allows outdoor manufacturing. As you can see from the slide on the screen, manufacturing B is basically our LI, light industrial, limited industrial kind of manufacturing. So all operations that are actually associated with the fabrication or manufacturing have to take place completely inside the building. The only thing that you can do outdoors would be storage and unloading of materials and finished products.
Okay.
Manufacturing C, that's where you get into the sandblasting or some of the heavier industrial.
Right.
Okay, thank you. All right, we have 5 minutes left. Sir, would you like to, I'm sorry, Mayor, if you don't mind, coming up to the podium and stating your name, address, and the zip code, and we can.
Mr. Chairman, just,
No, I'm sorry, you in opposition? Are you in opposition?
I was just, my name's Jeff McCall. I live on Whippoorwill Lane off of Griffin Road.
And your zip code?
27045.
Okay.
And I was just trying to help Myron, because we had met with him, and he was asking the question about the microbrewery, and sort of the microbrewery was, outdoor concerts, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And they can go on to midnight and you can hear it and a lot of these people's got animals, that don't do well with stuff like that. So that's all I was trying to say.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate that.
All right, is there anyone else who would like to speak in support? There's 4.5 minutes left, roughly.
6 minutes.
6 minutes left. Greater than 40 seconds. No, support.
Support.
All right.
ready to call that.
So now, if there's no more in support, we're going to go to the opposition. I have to speak, who signed up, Steve Lineback, Caroline Fleischer, James Knotts, and Thomas Kapp. So whoever wants to go first, again, please state your name, address, and zip code for the record.
Can you put the other one up that shows the housing up here?
The aerial.
The one that shows the housing?
Yeah, gotcha.
Yeah, okay.
Where you going
I live down on the other side. Okay. My name is James Knox, 125 Buckhaven Court, Rural Hall, North Carolina. I live on the other side of this, right here. Okay. My one concern here is the historical site. I haven't heard them say they were planning on keeping that house. It's a historical site. It's on all the maps that I see dealing with Winston-Salem. For all I know, they may want to tear it down. I don't think that should happen. There again, a lot of this up here is farmland that's going bye-bye.
I have a picture of the historical site.
Yeah, and a lot of this is going bye-bye, again, farmland. Okay, I don't object to this so much as concerns. See this creek right here? That works its way back over here, Muddy Creek, and comes in behind my house. So if there's a lot of steep runoff. So say there's a spill or something catches on fire. Pretty much something catches on fire. We had the Indiana Avenue thing. Okay? All that's going to come down past my house, the smell and everything. Okay? What I would like to see is, if we're going to do an industrial park, Winston-Salem seems to be taking in these industrial parks. They seem to be doing good, all of them along the southeast side of town. I would feel more comfortable knowing that a fire department is only about 4 minutes away versus one about 15 minutes away. So if, I think that should be in the city based on environmental concerns and fire concerns, because anything medical or whatever, city of Winston, if they're second, they may not get there in time, but by being first, and they have come down my street before, house next door caught on fire a couple of years ago, and they were there within 4 minutes, so, and along with everything else. But that's what I would propose. I think that's why these industrial parks get brought into the city, for concerns like that. That would be my concern. Because if we have a spill or anything bad happens, it's coming my way, and my neighbors, it's coming right through all these houses right through here. And it does appear to touch the city limits, so it doesn't have to be satellite, which it can be, but that's my concern there in the house. And y'all have a picture of that. And my neighbors or not that I've talked to, we didn't get any invitation, on Down Shore Road. I guess I didn't think we were going to be involved. But since that stream right there runs right by us, and I have a little stream that goes through my yard when it rains, it runs right into it also. So anyway, that's my concerns. Not so much opposition to it as the fact that we look at the environmental part of that in the house. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Knotts. How much time is left?
8.5 minutes.
8.5 minutes.
Hello, I'm Thomas Cap. I live at 2051 Cap Farm Road, Rural Hall.
Mr. Cap, do you mind, excuse me, do you mind pulling your mic down a little bit? Thank you.
You want me to start again?
Yes, sir.
Name is Thomas Cap. I live at 2051 Cap Farm Road, and that's from Rural Hall, 27045.
Thank you.
I'm opposed to the rezoning because there is no indication of what is coming in the beginning of and being the largest and landowner beside this area with over 50 acres of land, these plans look as though they will negatively affect the future of my land. There should be no more building in this area until both Shore Road and the Westinghouse Bridge are turned into 3-lane road. If there has to be a rezoning, the land east of the Beaver Dam Creek should stay in RS9, being there is a stub connection from the Chandler Point housing development, and this would eliminate any need to put a bridge over Beaver Creek Dam and any possible road down to the creek. Doing this would eliminate the traffic on Shore Road, would limit the traffic on Shore Road on the end of near the truck stop, and allow the creek to act as a natural buffer to separate homes from future businesses. This would lessen the impact on Beaver Dam Creek, which is a concern that is stated in the staff report. If you think this idea is not part of the legacy plan, let me tell you there is no legacy plan for this area of land anymore because it came to an end when the Love's Truck Stop was allowed to be built since it did not meet the legacy plan, which was stated in docket F-1606. The site of Love's Truck Stop should have been the entrance to this industrial park instead of coming down further onto Shore Road and planning to build a road over a drop-off. This will require a lot of unnecessary building because of the truck stop, and this negative impact was also stated in docket F-1606. To conclude, this area of land needs to be looked at again in the future, looked at again for future development in its entirety, not just one section looking to be rezoned. By doing this, maybe we will not have any further problems we have now that was created when the truck stop was allowed to be built that went against this now outdated legacy plan. Thank you.
Any questions for Mr. Cap? Okay, thank you. How much time is left?
6.5 minutes.
6.5 minutes.
My name is Steve Lineback. I live at 9275 Moore Road, about 2.7 miles from here as the crow flies, and as the semi drives, it's about the same. I would like to request a few more minutes. We had not anticipated Mr. Knox's opposition to take quite that long. So with your permission, I don't need it, but the person behind me might need a couple of more minutes. Can I request an extension, please?
We'll deal with that when we get to that point.
Thank you.
And also, Mr. Lombard, could you give us your zip code as well, please?
27050.
Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity, Mr. Chairman, board members, staff, friends, neighbors, to speak. I'm just glad my English teacher's not here. Let me begin by stating I'm opposed to the rezoning request. First of all, in spite of the CAD work, the colors, the charts, the screenshots, and the plans labeled preliminary, which means they're not based on proposed development of the site, nor hold the petitioners responsible for the adherence of a site plan as presented. In very fine print, in the lower right-hand corner of the preliminary sketch option, just above the preparer's block, is a disclaimer that reads, "This site plan is for illustrative purposes to show the proposed design intent. The plan is subject to change based on actual site conditions, local jurisdiction review, code requirements, and final architectural and engineering documents." It's just a drawing, folks. And unless the petitioners have are held to that site plan, I think it's moot. Since these plans are not formalized, the development is subject to some future design that may or may not bear any resemblance to what we're looking at today. That is, it is left to the petitioners to work with the planning staff on the technical aspects without any input from the adjoiners and or the community impacted by the project. These preliminary plans are also incomplete and contain errors in presentation, either by omission of pertinent information or by misrepresentation of existing features of the areas copied from public data sources. The information blocks on Lot 3 and 4. Yeah, thank you. No, it's
You want the other one?
the other one, please.
Okay. I think. Are you talking about this one?
That one, thank you,
Okay.
thank you. The information blocks for, and I'll try to control this mouse. Don't know if I'm going to be able to do that. But anyway, the information blocks for lots 3 and 4, which are down center on the lower side of the drawing, conveniently cover up the 2 houses on the adjacent property closest to the site boundary. One of the dwellings is a home place for the DeKalb descendants built in the mid-1800s. The other dwelling was built circa 1977 by Johnny Cap, DeKalb's son, and presently houses his widow, Carol Cap. The information block for Lot 7, which is at the southeast or the lower right-hand corner of the map, conveniently covers LeClaire Street, a stub street from the residential development Chandler Point, which was required by the planning staff to serve that area of property zoned RS9, adjacent to US 52, lying east of the site's main water course, Beaver Dam Creek. And again, Beaver Dam Creek would be here and run south through the property. This creek floods not infrequently and would be a little bit of a chore to cross, I'm sure. Beaver Dam Creek, which flows southwardly to Muddy Creek, which flows through one of Forsyth County's oldest towns, Bethania, before flowing to Clemens and ultimately into the Yadkin River. Note that this would be the path of any pollutants from the site into this major water course. This parcel east of Beaver Dam Creek should be removed from the petition and designated use consistent with its present zoning, RS9, which would act as a buffer from the intense LI uses that remain available for residential growth. On the subject of pollutants, stormwater would wash those from the parking and paved areas of the site where lubricants, fuels, winter roadway treatment chemicals, potential cargo and container leaks, and debris and other substances to be stored, transferred, moved, and handled on the docks and doorways of the proposed buildings, ultimately to the waterways and drainages presently located on the site. Although the plans show SWMs, acronyms for stormwater management features, the impervious surface, including roofs, parking areas, streets, and walks, from which over 90% of the stormwater would flow, would total approximately 1.5 million square feet, or approximately 30% of the site area. The extra burden would overwhelm the channel of Beaver Dam Creek, even with engineered SWMs built with best practices specifications. Another fly in the ointment of this proposed petition is another acronym, the TIA, or Traffic Impact Analysis, of the US 52 interchange with Westinghouse, Shore, and Griffin Roads, as well as the bridge across US 52, 2-lane, which would need to carry any northbound traffic to and from the site and Love's truck stop, as well as local traffic to Rule Hall, Tobacco, and King. Although we've not had time to fully study the finer points of this TIA due to the accelerated timeline for the rezoning, the traffic count was performed between the hours of 7 to 9 a.m. and 4 to 6 p.m. on November 1st, 2023, a Wednesday, well before the northern bypass was connected to US 52 North, and without any data from Love's impact on traffic once it's opened. This data is already obsolete and clouds the actual impact of US 52 North and South interchanges, as well as Westinghouse Road, Shore Road, and Griffin Road, and the 2-lane bridge over the 4-lane. What the TIA does not consider is that the increased traffic flow will occur not only on weekdays, but nights, weekends, and especially holidays when vacationers are headed in both directions after gassing up and grabbing a sandwich on the go. Mixed in with this will be semis and tractor trailers moving, transferring, loading, unloading their cargoes before heading back onto US 52 or on I-74 back toward Kernersville, Greensboro, and points beyond. Before this project can go forward, it should be examined from the standpoint of the cost of potential required infrastructure improvements and additional maintenance that will be a burden on Forsyth County, the state of North Carolina, and the taxpayers in general. We cannot believe this will be cost-effective in comparison with the increase of the tax value of the area. In conclusion, it is my opinion that the increased density of the improvements, the environmental impacts associated with the proposed project, and the lack of input from the local community, the increased stress on transportation infrastructure, the additional noise and light pollution generated by the site, and the domino effect of this rezoning on the adjacent and neighboring properties justifies a negative recommendation by you, the board, to the county commissioners for this rezoning petition. A continuance on this hearing, for this hearing, would allow better community input and oversight of the impact of this use of the property for all involved. Reduced density, better and larger buffer areas, and improved and reliable traffic plan and a detailed site plan for specific improvements and land uses should be required to ensure the proper use of the site, as well as protecting the other property owners from the area. I ask you, please help us want to return back to our homes and communities and be able to get there. Thank you.
So we are out of time. Are there any questions for? All right, thank you, sir.
I'm sorry.
Oh, no, that's fine.
Thank
it was well written. So there was one more. Ma'am, if you have something that is a little different, I will, with the board's permission, allow you to speak. Yes. But technically, you're out of time. Okay, hold on 1 second. I need to get permission.
I move that we extend the time by 2 minutes.
Second.
All right, 2 minutes. All right. Any opposition? No. All right, you have 2 minutes. If you state your name, address, and zip code for the record.
My name is Caroline Cap Fleischer, and my address is 788 Horncastle Road, Winston-Salem, 27104. Anyone that's in opposition with me, please stand. Thank you. So, I am in opposition of RS9 being changed to an LIS. I am currently the property owner of 30 acres within 500 feet of the rezoning, and my mother's home is also within 500 feet. It's on the east side. And so my mother's not here today because she cannot attend because of health reasons. I was comparing both the RS9 and the LIS, and there's some things they have in common that obviously it seems as though the petitioner does not want, and that would be the police or fire station, the recreational facility, like a High Point athletic complex, that just a thought, a transmission tower, a school, public or private, which now that there's a Love's truck stop there, who would want to put a school there because of potential drug use or prostitution and human trafficking? And then utilities. So those are the things they have in common. We are against it because the site plan does not have the exact things that will be there. There's a list, and this list in this has all kinds of things that we are against. And some of those things were mentioned by the mayor of Tobaccoville, so I won't go through those again. But with that LIS, there is no agriculture.
You want me to put it on the screen so they can see?
More.
What? Oh.
Let me zoom it out before you keep going.
Oh. Yeah, that's the list. Okay. So this list of things that can be built on this property is very long, and without more specifics about what it could possibly be, we cannot be certain what our opinion would be of it. As a city planning committee, ask yourselves, what is the goal of this land development? Is your goal economic growth? Is your goal a safe place for the residents? Is your goal to help the citizens thrive? Right now, the potential for crime and drugs at Love's Truck Stop does not bring the idea of a safe place. So So what can be a building to help make a safe place? So that's what Tobaccoville said. According to the Tobaccoville Council, they wanted something that would act like a buffer, like a building buffer from the Love's truck stop. So these things don't...
I'm sorry, you're out of time. We actually gave you 3 minutes.
I have stuff to say about the historical property as well.
I understand, but we're out of time.
I spent like hours preparing for this, and this is my mother's property,
I understand.
right here. This is not fair at all. I think this is very not fair.
Mr. Knox jumped in front of her.
I will once again defer to the planning board.
Okay, I have 2 minutes, and I think that, like, and then that's really it.
Okay. So one thing to consider is that when you widen the road and you're going to have a turn lane, you're going to end up taking some of my property and some of the Cap Farm property that's on the other side. And so that should be considered. The historical house in 1991, that Columbus Cap historical house, was on the National Registry. And so, but now I'm not sure if it is, but that house still stands there. And that is the son of my great-great-grandfather. The land has been in our family since 1792 when Hiram Cap left Salem and acquired the property at that time in 1792. So that area has been in our family for generations. And the farm that's there, there's been farmers there throughout from Heinrich to William Washington Cap to John William Cap and Henry D. Cap, and then my father, and then my brother, Thomas Cap, who already spoke and owns the land there. So we need to preserve this, just like John Muir came and he worked and he wanted to preserve the national parks. So if there's somebody that's not standing to preserve these areas, this farm area, you're going to end up not having any more farm area. And so I'm having a shorten. So I wanted to show you a picture of the house that just went up for sale yesterday that's across from that site. And the reason that they put it up for sale, they brought it in 2020, is because they don't want to be near a truck stop and they don't want to be near all of this property, whatever this building is as well. And so, but we have been owning this property for our lifetimes. So they don't have the kind of vested interest in the property that we have. And so I would ask you to consider that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Fleischer. Any questions for Ms. Fleischer? All right, before we go into discussion and emotion, I'd like to thank everyone for coming out tonight. We really listen to citizen input, and I know it may seem unfair sometimes when we say time is up, but that's just the nature, that's the law. So again, thank you. Hopefully you don't feel disrespected or don't feel like we're listening to you. We listen, and we listen intently to your conversation. So thank you for coming out. Any questions? Oh, so now I'm going to declare the public hearing closed. What is the pleasure of the board in this case? Would anyone like to make a motion or discussion? Yes.
Well, I wanted to say, because I went back and checked, there was a comment made that the traffic didn't include Love's, and it did include traffic, the traffic study.
The traffic study did include Love's.
Mm-hmm. It's on page 9.
Okay.
And while we're on the topic of Love's, that got brought up multiple times in this specific case, and we're not here to rehear the rezoning of Love's. That was rezoned several years ago, rightly, wrongly, whether you agree with it or not. That's not part of our consideration today. We're asked to look at whether this particular site complies with the comprehensive plan, and then whether we think it's appropriate to rezone it, not whether Love's ought to be there and whether there are negative impacts of Love's or not. So.
And I'll just add that this is what we're going to see moving forward. We need jobs. We need industry. I previously worked in economic development. I'm familiar with this land. I've known that it's been on land use recommended for industrial for years, so I knew eventually the day would come. So that the positive there is that it opens up an opportunity for more employers, hopefully good paying jobs that then supports the economy. But the challenge here is that generally speaking, the only place you can get new industrial has to be farmland.
Does not force them to cease their agricultural operations. So we're not voting today to tell you if you own that property, you can't keep farming it, okay? Now, if you sell it to somebody that doesn't want to farm it, then that's a different story. But nobody's going to come tell you can't plant, you can't pasture, you can't whatever. It's just eventually somebody could do something else with it. I don't know if that helps or not, but.
Well, you brought up something that we'll face in all of these is the landowner, the person that owns the land.
Mr. Chairman,
I'm sorry.
Should they not be able to sell their land?
I'm sorry, you said.
They not be able to sell their land
Right.
when these changes occur and the opportunities happen.
I'll make them. Anyone else?
I think Mr. Murphy had.
I do just, it was mentioned several times related to the Columbus Cap House, and I do want to point out that because something is determined to be eligible for the National Register does not put it on the National Register, and just because something is on the National Register does not preclude being able to modify, tear down, or do anything else. The Columbus Cap House, which is on the subject property, was determined eligible for the National Register in 1992, but was never actually put on the National Register. We do have a condition of approval if this case were to get approved to require them to photo document. So we do have documentation of it within our historic resource files. So we do have a condition related to that. But again, it's a private property issue in the context that this is not a local landmark, this is not a local district, this is something that's determined eligible for the National Register, but is not something that has to be maintained.
Is the historic preservation staff aware of this and
they review that?
Yeah, so they could potentially help make the fact known that these structures might be available. Right.
Correct. They are aware of the current condition of the property, and they felt that photo documentation would be reasonable.
One question, there was no condition to exclude any uses, right? Okay, great. I move the planning board find that the request is consistent with the comprehensive plan for F-1638.
Second.
Motion by Ms. McRae, second by Mr. Grubbs. Any discussion? All those in favor, sign of aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? That is unanimous.
I further move that the planning board recommend approval of F-1638.
Motion by Ms. McRae. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Lamb. Any discussion? All those in favor, sign of aye. Aye. Any opposition? That is unanimous. Thank you. That case passes.
And again, this will go to the commissioners sometime
So this
in early
will go
March.
to the county commissioners in March, sometime in March. We will take a moment so the chamber can clear out.
I'm so glad I live downtown. I'm pretty sure they do. That's a nice
Contentious. I think they're tough. These motherfuckers. I appreciate you taking your time. And I'll be talking for records. Hopefully you're right. So, thank you.
I
didn't do a great job.
Oh, man.
I need to think.
Look at
Human trafficking. Drugs and
There was a meeting a couple months ago that only went 75,
human trafficking.
65, 70.
Gotcha. Okay.
So I wonder where is it going to come from? The citizens of Toronto? The Constitution?
It's going to come from all those, Canadian drugs, Mexican drugs.
Oh my gosh.
I got stopped once in the middle of Kansas.
Okay, if you don't mind, we have to continue the meeting. Mayor Marion, I'm sorry, if you don't mind stepping out, we have to continue the meeting. All right, we're going back into the meeting now, and staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We do have just a couple items. First of all, I'll turn to Kirk, who'll give you a preview of the February work session.
All right, thank you, Chris. And again, good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. I will be brief. We only have one item at this point for the work session. It's going to be a presentation from Dr. Shailene Miller, who is the city's relatively newly hired sustainability director. She's going to be updating the board on some of the work that her department has been doing and maybe some opportunities for partnership in moving forward sustainability initiatives. So I know you all are always interested in education on things going on in the community, but that is it for work session.
All right.
Now I'll also turn to Mark, who will give a preview of the March zoning cases.
Yes, we have 9 total items with 5 new rezoning cases, 1 elected body special use permit, 1 new planning board review, 1 continued planning board review, which you know is Bethania Forest, and 1 text amendment.
And then I'll also turn to Mark, who will introduce one of our newest staff members, which is Ellie Levina.
She has filled our last project planner position. So this is Ellie Levina. She has a master's in public administration with a concentration in urban and regional planning and policy from UNC Wilmington.
Welcome, Ms. Levina.
We don't always get out this early, so just prepare yourself.
So before we dismiss, I would like to allow Councilmember Scipio to have some remarks. And the reason I say that, I was at the unveiling of the Union Cross.
We built this.
We built this. So if you don't mind just kind of telling people where it is now.
She's ready to go home.
Are you ready to go home? All right.
Mr. Chairman, I will step in for Councilmember Scipio because I was actually going to talk about the We Built This. It did have its grand opening last Friday at Union Station, and it was a great event. I think there were 140, 150 folks there for the unveiling. It was basically, if you haven't seen it, it tells a great story. If you haven't seen it, you can go to the fairgrounds over the next 3 Saturdays, and it will be there from 6 a.m. to 12 p.m. And then once it leaves our possession, it goes to Winston-Salem State. This was an effort between the city, the Historic Resources Commission, Winston-Salem State. It will be at Winston-Salem State campus throughout the month of March. So you can also, and it has the times there whenever you'd be able to see the exhibit. But again, it's a great exhibit, and I would highly encourage you, if you haven't seen it, to definitely go see it.
Quick question, if we go during spring break, will they not ticket us?
That I cannot answer.
I don't know if they had mentioned it to anybody. It's hard to park over there.
Mr. Chairman, finally, the last thing I have is you have at your place both the development dashboard and the Forsyth County development trends. Take a look at that. If you have any burning questions, feel free to reach out to us. Steve Smotherman will be at your March meeting to kind of go over that. That's generally whenever he comes and gives you kind of the state of the union, so to speak, from an economic and development trends standpoint. So anyway, but we want to make sure we provided that information to you today. And with that, I am finished.
All right, is there anything else for the good of the order?
Right, we'll have our motion to adjourn.
All right. Motion and second.
All right. Thank you all for that marathon session.